The world is at a crossroads. Geopolitical alliances are shifting, challenging decades of American dominance. The Trump-Putin meeting symbolizes this change with global implications. From Ukraine to European capitals, the reverberations are felt worldwide. This is a global turning point, shaping the future of international security. Understanding these forces is essential for navigating this volatile environment. The Trump-Putin meeting sent shockwaves through the international community. It signaled a deepening rift between the US and its European allies. Trump's solo meeting with Putin was seen as a betrayal of transatlantic partners. The lack of transparency fueled speculation and mistrust. Reports suggested discussions on Ukraine, sanctions, and NATO, heightening anxieties. The Trump-Putin meeting highlights a shift towards a multipolar world order. American hegemony is fading, with China and Russia rising. China's growing economy and assertive policy challenge US influence globally. Russia seeks to reassert itself using military force in Ukraine. This multipolar world presents both opportunities and challenges. It could lead to a balanced power distribution or a more unstable environment. The Trump-Putin meeting exposed deep fissures in the transatlantic alliance. The lack of transparency and perceived concessions to Russia ignited criticism. European leaders expressed concern over potential deals undermining their interests. Headlines accused Trump of abandoning Europe for an authoritarian leader. The meeting signaled America's waning commitment to European allies. The Trump-Putin meeting reflected Trump's America First foreign policy. This approach prioritized American interests, straining traditional alliances. Trump's admiration for authoritarian leaders contrasted with his approach to democratic allies. His foreign policy lacked coherence, creating global uncertainty. Allies were bewildered and adversaries emboldened by this unpredictability. The war in Ukraine exposed the fragility of the post-Cold War order. Ukraine became a battleground for competing visions of international order. The Trump-Putin meeting raised concerns of Ukraine being sacrificed in a grand bargain. Ukrainian President Zelensky navigated a complex geopolitical landscape. He sought to safeguard sovereignty while avoiding conflict escalation. The Trump-Putin meeting was a wake-up call for Europe. It exposed NATO's limitations and questioned the alliance's credibility. European leaders began exploring greater self-reliance in defense. France and Germany pushed for increased defense capabilities. The meeting accelerated Europe's journey towards strategic autonomy. Gaza is a microcosm of global power plays. The Trump-Putin meeting cast a shadow over the Middle East. Trump's pro-Israel stance raised concerns among Palestinians. Russia's influence in the region challenges US dominance. Gaza symbolizes the broader geopolitical struggle and human toll. The fragile ceasefire in Gaza is a powder keg awaiting ignition. Tensions simmer beneath the surface, with underlying issues unresolved. Hamas declared victory but faced criticism for the conflict's destruction. Israel faced condemnation for its disproportionate use of force. The ceasefire did little to address the root causes of the conflict. Trump's approach to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict sparked outrage. Recognizing Jerusalem as Israel's capital disregarded Palestinian claims. The deal of the century was seen as biased towards Israel. Trump's approach deepened divides and fueled violence. His legacy in the region is one of broken promises and shattered hopes. The The Trump-Putin meeting ushered in uncertainty in the Middle East. The Abraham Accords reshaped the regional landscape. These agreements created a new axis of cooperation but deepened Arab world divisions. The Middle East is at a crossroads, moving towards a multipolar system. The outcome remains uncertain, with both opportunities and perils. The region is entering a new era of transformation. The legacy of slavery and colonialism casts a long shadow over Africa. Centuries of exploitation hindered the continent's development. The transatlantic slave trade decimated populations and robbed human capital. Colonialism entrenched power imbalances, leaving Africa impoverished. The call for reparations seeks to address historical injustices and create equity. The call for reparations is about shaping a more just and equitable future, acknowledging historical injustices and addressing systemic inequalities. Reparations include financial compensation, debt cancellation, and investment in education and healthcare. They are a starting point for healing and reconciliation. The path requires confronting the past and working together for a better future. The U.S. International Development Agency, once seen as a benign force for good in the world, has come under increasing scrutiny in recent years, accused of advancing a hidden agenda that often undermines the interests of the very countries it claims to help. Critics allege that USAID, under the guise of promoting democracy and development, has funneled money to organizations and individuals aligned with US foreign policy objectives, often with little transparency or accountability. These accusations have gained traction in countries like Slovakia, where Prime Minister Robert Fico has demanded answers from Musk about USAID's activities. The controversy surrounding USAID highlights the growing distrust of Western institutions and the perception that they are often used to advance neo-colonial agendas. It also underscores the complex and often contradictory nature of foreign aid, which can be both a tool for good and an instrument of power projection. The allegations against USAID, if true, strike at the heart of the United States' claim to be a beacon of democracy and a force for good in the world. They raise uncomfortable questions about the use of soft power and the ethics of foreign intervention. The Trump era witnessed a dramatic escalation in accusations of media bias and manipulation, with Trump himself repeatedly accusing mainstream media outlets of spreading fake news and being part of a deep state conspiracy against him. These accusations reached a fever pitch during Trump's first impeachment trial, which stemmed from his alleged attempts to pressure Ukraine to investigate his political rival Joe Biden. Trump and his allies accused the media of being complicit in a partisan witch hunt, claiming that they had misrepresented the facts and ignored evidence that exonerated the president. Musk's revelation that the Reuters news agency had received funding from USAID and had allegedly played a role in promoting the impeachment narrative further fueled these accusations. It reinforced the belief among Trump's supporters that the media was not an impartial observer, but an active participant in a political campaign to remove him from office. The allegations of media manipulation, whether true or not, have eroded public trust in traditional news sources and contributed to a climate of polarization and distrust. They have also highlighted the growing influence of social media platforms, which have become increasingly important sources of information and disinformation. The Trump-Putin meeting, USAID controversy, and media manipulation allegations are seen as part of a deep state narrative, a network of bureaucrats, intelligence officials, corporate elites, and media figures allegedly subvert democracy. Trump's America First stance and Musk's skepticism of centralized power challenge this establishment. Their actions resonate with those feeling left behind by globalization. The geopolitical tremors unleashed by the Trump-Putin meeting, the escalating tensions with China, and the ongoing conflicts in Ukraine and the Middle East signal a profound shift in the global order. The old certainties and established alliances are crumbling, leaving a sense of uncertainty. The post-Cold War era is fading into history. The unipolar moment is over. We are entering a new era defined by multipolarity and heightened competition. The rules-based international order is under strain. International institutions face challenges to their legitimacy. The norms of diplomacy and cooperation are eroding. The world is adrift, searching for a new equilibrium. The old maps no longer suffice. We are sailing in uncharted waters, facing an uncertain future. Europe, once central to global affairs, now faces marginalization and internal divisions. The Trump-Putin meeting has revived fears of vulnerability. The war in Ukraine shattered illusions of peace. It exposed Europe's energy dependence and military weakness. The conflict highlighted the limits of European unity. China's rise poses a new challenge. Its Belt and Road Initiative raises concerns. Europe faces an existential crisis. It must choose between old alliances and new autonomy. The decline of American hegemony has created space for other actors to assert themselves on the global stage. Regional powers like China, India, Turkey and Brazil are forging new alliances and challenging traditional centers of power. China, with its vast resources, is at the forefront of this shift. Beijing's Belt and Road Initiative signals its ambition to reshape the global order. Russia remains a formidable military power despite economic woes. Moscow's alliance with China and interventions in Syria and Ukraine show its determination. The rise of regional powers is reshaping the geopolitical landscape. The old binary of East versus West is giving way to a more nuanced and multipolar system. A world on edge, navigating the perils and promises of a multipolar future. The world is at a crossroads, poised between the perils of a new Cold War and the promise of a more just and equitable international order. The choices made in the coming years will determine the course of the 21st century and beyond. The rise of nationalism, fueled by economic anxiety and political polarization, poses a serious threat to global stability. The erosion of democratic norms and the spread of misinformation create a fertile ground for conflict and instability. The climate crisis represents an existential threat to humanity. Addressing this challenge will require unprecedented global cooperation. The technological revolution presents profound risks. Cyber warfare and the weaponization of information have the potential to disrupt societies. Navigating this complex landscape will require wisdom and a commitment to dialogue. The future is not predetermined. It is up to us to shape it in a way that benefits all of humanity. The twilight of the old order, a world remade. The world as we knew it is no more. The old order, the familiar arrangements of power and influence, the established rules and norms that have governed international relations for decades, are crumbling before our eyes. The geopolitical landscape is being redrawn, not with the stroke of a pen, but with the force of tectonic shifts, unleashing tremors that are being felt from the battlefields of Ukraine to the streets of European capitals. The Trump-Putin meeting, a stark symbol of this transformation, laid bare the fragility of the transatlantic alliance, the erosion of American hegemony, and the emergence of a more fragmented and unpredictable world. It exposed the fault lines in the international system, the cracks in the edifice of global governance, and the growing disconnect between the aspirations of a rules-based order and the realities of a world increasingly defined by power politics. The old certainties are gone. The familiar landmarks, the comforting illusions of stability and predictability have vanished. We are entering uncharted territory, navigating a world in flux, where the old maps no longer suffice and the only constant is change itself. The crisis of leadership, a world adrift in a sea of uncertainty. This new world order is characterized by shifting power dynamics and a crisis of leadership. The United States and its European allies seem unsure of their roles, divided in their responses. The US, once the global security guarantor, appears inward-focused, consumed by domestic divisions. The Trump presidency, with its America First rhetoric, accelerated this retreat. Europe, facing its own crisis, is caught between strategic autonomy and dependence on the US. The war in Ukraine has exposed Europe's military and economic vulnerabilities. The absence of clear leadership has created a vacuum, emboldening those who challenge the status quo. The imperative of cooperation, a fragile world in need of shared stewardship. In this era of unprecedented challenges, international cooperation is essential. Global problems like climate change, pandemics, and cyber warfare transcend borders. The world stands at a crossroads. We can choose cooperation and dialogue for a peaceful, sustainable future.